Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, squinting at the massive structure before him. The Zephyrian Temple ship Eternal Vigil stretched for kilometers in every direction, its biomechanical hull pulsing with a faint, sickly light. He'd been working aboard alien vessels for nearly a decade, but nothing had prepared him for this. Just keep your head down, fix what needs fixing, and collect your pay, he muttered to himself, the same mantra that had kept him alive in the darker corners of the galaxy. The Zephyrians were a proud species, tall and ethereal with translucent skin that showed the flow of their silvery blood beneath. They moved with an almost religious reverence through their ship, speaking in hushed tones about their sacred burden. Marcus had learned not to ask too many questions about alien customs. Credits were credits, and the Zephyrians paid well for human engineering expertise. Captain Veiltar approached, her forearms folded in the traditional gesture of respectful greeting. Her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but there was an underlying tension that made Marcus uneasy. Mechanic Chun, we require your immediate attention in the Sanctum Core. There are irregularities in the primary life support systems. Marcus grabbed his toolkit, a battered collection of human and alien tools he'd accumulated over the years. What kind of irregularities? Power fluctuations? Atmospheric processing failures? The captain's large, opalescent eyes avoided his gaze. The sacred guardian grows restless. The containment systems strain under the burden of maintaining the balance between life and death. This was new. In all his time aboard the ship, the Zephyrians had been deliberately vague about what lay in the ship's central chamber. Marcus had assumed it was some kind of religious artifact or perhaps an advanced AI core. The notion that it was somehow alive had never crossed his mind. They descended through the ship's organic corridors, past chambers where Zephyrian priests chanted in their ancient tongue. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with increasing intensity as they moved deeper into the vessel. Bioluminescent veins running through the ceiling cast shifting patterns of blue and green light. Captain, I need to know what I'm dealing with if you want me to fix it properly, Marcus said, his boots echoing off the strange, almost cartilaginous floor. My species doesn't have the same taboos yours might. Sometimes an outsider's perspective is exactly what you need. Veiltar stopped walking and turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice carried centuries of weariness. You humans have a saying about sleeping giants, do you not? Before Marcus could respond, they arrived at the entrance to the Sanctum Core. Massive doors made of what appeared to be fossilized bone stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of the chamber beyond. The air here was thick with an energy that made Marcus's skin crawl and his tools hum with residual charge. The Guardian was once the most powerful of our ancient kings, Veiltar explained, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. When the plague of the void spawn threatened to consume our homeworld, he underwent the great sacrifice. His consciousness was preserved in a state between life and death, his body transformed into a living weapon of immense power. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. You're telling me there's an undead alien superweapon in there? Not undead, not alive, something beyond both states. For 3,000 years, he has protected our people, his dreams keeping the void spawn at bay across the galaxy. But lately he stirs. The dreams become nightmares. The protective barriers weaken. The doors groaned open, revealing the chamber beyond. Marcus stepped inside and immediately understood why the Zephyrians considered this place sacred. The room was vast, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move in the shifting light. Cables and biomechanical tubes snaked across every surface, all leading to the center of the chamber. There, suspended in a crystalline sarcophagus filled with glowing fluid, was the Guardian. The being had once been Zephyrian, but transformation had rendered it into something else entirely. Its body was easily 4 meters tall, covered in metallic plates that had grown from within its very bones. Cables pierced its skull and spine, connecting directly to its nervous system. Its face was serene but alien, features sharpened, and elongated beyond normal Zephyrian proportions. Most unsettling were its eyes. Even through the closed lids, Marcus could see them moving constantly, as if the Guardian were experiencing the most vivid of dreams. Occasionally, the fluid around the body would ripple, and the entire ship would shudder slightly. "The containment field generators are failing," Veiltar said, pointing to several panels around the chamber that flickered with warning lights. "Our own engineers dare not approach close enough for proper repair. They fear that any disturbance might wake him prematurely." Marcus studied the setup with professional interest. The technology was a fascinating blend of Zephyrian bioengineering and what appeared to be much older, more primitive mechanical systems. Power conduits showed signs of stress fractures, and several of the monitoring devices were clearly operating well beyond their intended parameters. "What happens if he wakes up?" Marcus asked, already pulling diagnostic equipment from his toolkit. "We do not know. He was designed to fight beings of pure entropy and darkness. What he might do if awakened in our current peaceful era." Veiltar's voice trailed off ominously. Marcus approached one of the failing generator panels, noting how the biomechanical components had grown around and through the original machinery. It was like performing surgery on a living building. As he began his initial scans, the Guardian's eyes moved more rapidly beneath their lids. "Interesting," Marcus muttered, watching his readings. "Your people integrated organic and mechanical systems in ways that shouldn't be possible. The Guardian isn't just connected to these machines. He's become part of them. The ship itself is an extension of his body." Veiltar moved closer, her natural curiosity overcoming her reverence. "Our ancestors were masters of such integration. The knowledge has been lost for millennia." Marcus began carefully removing an access panel, revealing a tangle of organic fibers and crystalline circuits. The moment his tools made contact with the systems, every monitor in the chamber spiked. The Guardian's breathing, which had been barely perceptible, became more pronounced. "He knows someone is here," Veiltar whispered, backing away from the sarcophagus. But Marcus was already deep in his work, his mind focused on the problem before him. The failing systems were like a puzzle, and he'd always been good with puzzles. He traced power flows, identified bottlenecks, and began making careful adjustments to the containment field generators. What he didn't notice was how the Guardian's face had turned slightly toward him, or how the ancient being's lips had curved into something that might have been a smile. The Zephyrian priests in the outer chambers suddenly stopped their chanting. Throughout the ship, crew members felt a strange sensation, as if something vast and powerful had just taken notice of their world. In the depths of space surrounding the temple ship, shadows that had nothing to do with the absence of light began to stir. Marcus worked on, unaware that his simple act of maintenance was about to change the fate of 3 species and wake something that had been deliberately kept dormant for very good reasons. The Guardian's dreams were shifting, becoming more focused, more aware. For the first time in 3,000 years, King Zarthal the Eternal began to remember what it felt like to be truly alive. The repairs took Marcus 3 hours of delicate work. Each adjustment sent ripples through the Guardian's containment field, causing the ancient being to twitch or shift slightly. What concerned him most was how the biomechanical systems seemed to be actively resisting his efforts, as if they had developed their own protective instincts over the millennia. "This is incredible," Marcus said, running his scanner over a section where organic neural tissue had completely replaced what should have been standard circuitry. "Your Guardian didn't just interface with the ship's systems, he assimilated them. Look at these readings." Veiltar approached hesitantly, her 4 eyes wide with amazement at the data streaming across Marcus's portable display. "These energy patterns, they're cognitive processes. The ship itself is thinking." "More than that," Marcus replied, making another careful adjustment to a power coupling. "The ship is dreaming along with him. Every system aboard this vessel has been influenced by 3,000 years of shared consciousness. No wonder your people treat this place as sacred." As he spoke, Marcus noticed something strange happening to his tools. The metal components were beginning to show traces of the same crystalline growth he'd observed throughout the ship. More unsettling, he could feel a faint tingling in his hands where they'd made contact with the Guardian systems. The tingling intensified when he reached for the final failed component, a biomechanical processor that seemed to be the central hub for the Guardian's dream state monitoring. The moment his fingers touched the organic casing, the chamber filled with a low, harmonic hum. The Guardian's eyes snapped open. Marcus froze, his hand still in contact with the system. The ancient being's gaze was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Eyes that held the weight of millennia, intelligence that spanned the space between life and death, and something else. Recognition. You are not Zephyrian. The Guardian spoke, his voice resonating through the chamber's speakers and directly into their minds simultaneously. The sound carried harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. Veiltar immediately dropped to her knees, her forearms spread wide in the position of ultimate reverence. Great Guardian, forgive this intrusion. The human mechanic was only attempting to stabilize your containment systems. The Guardian's attention remained fixed on Marcus, who found himself unable to move away from the biomechanical interface. Human, the ancient being said, tasting the word. I have seen your species in the dream paths. Young, but with potential that burns bright in the cosmic tapestry. Marcus finally found his voice. I was just fixing the equipment. The power distribution network was failing. A sound that might have been laughter echoed through the chamber. Just fixing, the Guardian repeated. Do you understand what you have touched, young mechanic? This is not mere machinery. This is the convergence of consciousness, technology, and made manifest. And you have interfaced with it directly. Looking down at his hands, Marcus saw that the crystalline growth had spread further up his arms. More alarming, he could feel his awareness expanding, picking up signals and data streams that his human brain shouldn't have been able to process. What's happening to me? He asked, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. You have been marked, the Guardian explained, rising slowly within his crystalline chamber. The fluid around him began to churn more violently. The ancient protocols recognize you as a compatible interface. Very few beings possess the neural architecture necessary for such integration. Veiltar looked up in horror. Great Guardian, surely you do not mean to. The dreams have been changing, faithful captain. I have seen visions of the void spawn returning in numbers beyond counting. The barriers I have maintained for 3 millennia grow weak not from system failure, but from the approach of a threat I may not be able to face alone. The Guardian's attention turned back to Marcus, who was now receiving a constant stream of information directly into his consciousness. Ship status, power flow patterns, defensive capabilities, and underneath it all, something vast and hungry moving through the space between stars. Your species has a saying about the right tool for the right job, the Guardian continued. I am a weapon designed for a specific purpose. But weapons require those who can wield them effectively. The Zephyrians, blessed though they are, lack the necessary adaptability. Marcus felt understanding dawn with horrible clarity. You want to use me as some kind of control interface. Not use. Partner. The approaching darkness requires innovation, creativity, the ability to think in ways that transcend traditional boundaries. These are distinctly human traits. Through the expanding connection, Marcus could sense what the Guardian meant. In the far reaches of space, something immense was stirring. Entities of pure entropy that fed on the life force of entire star systems were gathering, drawn by some cosmic alignment that occurred once every 100,000 years. The void spawn, Veiltar whispered, her voice filled with ancient terror. The Eaters of Worlds. They return as foretold, the Guardian confirmed. But this time, they bring with them spawn of the deep dark, things that were not present during our last confrontation. I will need capabilities I do not currently possess. Marcus tried to step back from the interface, but found his consciousness too deeply intertwined with the ship's systems. What if I refuse? Then you die when they consume this galaxy, along with every other living thing. But if you choose to assist, you become something new, something that has never existed before. The crystalline growth had reached Marcus's shoulders now, but strangely, he felt no pain. Instead, there was a sense of expansion, as if his mind were growing to accommodate vast, new capabilities. He could feel the pulse of stars, the movement of distant fleets, the dreams of sleeping planets. "Show me," Marcus said quietly. The Guardian smiled, an expression that was both terrifying and beautiful on his transformed features. "Behold the true scope of the threat we face." The chamber filled with holographic displays, showing the galaxy from a perspective no human had ever witnessed. At the edge of visible space, vast shadows moved between stars, leaving behind systems stripped of all life and energy. They moved with purpose and intelligence that spoke of eons of experience in cosmic predation. "They are not merely destroyers," the Guardian explained. "They are harvesters. Each world they consume adds to their collective consciousness, their strategic capabilities. They have devoured 1,000 galaxies before ours." Marcus studied the displays, his enhanced perception allowing him to process tactical information at superhuman speeds. "But they're not invincible. They have patterns, weaknesses." "Precisely. And with human adaptability combined with Zephyrian biotechnology and my own accumulated power, we might forge something capable of not just defending against them, but taking the fight to their source." Veiltar rose slowly, her expression cycling through fear, wonder, and determination. "The prophecies spoke of a joining of 3 paths. We believed it referred to political alliance. But this is evolution," the Guardian said. "The next step in the cosmic dance between creation and entropy." Marcus felt the last of his purely human consciousness slipping away, replaced by something larger and more complex. But unlike the loss he'd expected, it felt like awakening from a small dream into a much larger reality. "I can see them now," he said, his voice carrying new harmonics. "The void spawn. They're not just coming for our galaxy. They're fleeing something even worse." The Guardian's expression sharpened. "What do you see?" "Behind them, in the space between realities, something that makes them look like minor predators. And it's gaining ground. For the first time in 3 millennia, King Zarthul, the Eternal, felt something approaching fear. The game was even larger than he had imagined, and the stakes higher than the survival of mere galaxies. The transformation was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. His consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his physical body, flowing through the ship's biomechanical networks like electricity through copper wire. He could feel every system, every power conduit, every living component that made up the vast temple ship. But more than that, he could sense the Guardian's memories. 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge flooded into his awareness. Battles fought across star systems, the desperate last stand of the Zephyrian homeworld, the terrible moment when King Zarthul had chosen to sacrifice his mortality for the chance to protect his people. Marcus experienced it all in an instant that felt like lifetimes. "Overwhelming, is it not?" the Guardian asked, his voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere, a part of the ship's very structure. "The weight of accumulated experience. Your species handles information integration remarkably well." Marcus found he could still speak, though he wasn't entirely sure if his words came from his mouth or directly from the ship's communication systems. "It's like having access to the universe's largest library while your brain is still learning to read." An apt comparison, but observe how quickly you adapt. It was true. The flood of alien memories and sensations was already becoming manageable, his mind automatically organizing the information into useful categories. Human neuroplasticity, it seemed, was exactly what this ancient system had been waiting for. Veiltar watched in fascination and terror as Marcus's physical form began to change. The crystalline growth now covered most of his body, but rather than appearing parasitic, it seemed to enhance him. His eyes now held the same depth as the Guardian's, and when he moved, it was with preternatural grace and purpose. "The crew must be informed," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. This change, they will see it as either divine miracle or catastrophic violation of natural order. Both perspectives have merit, Marcus replied, his consciousness now split between his transformed body and the ship's sensory arrays. But right now we have more immediate concerns. He gestured, and the chamber filled with tactical displays showing the approaching threat. The Void Spawn fleet had grown larger since their last observation, dark shapes that seemed to bend space around them as they moved between star systems. They're not following predictable routes, Marcus observed, his enhanced awareness allowing him to process movement patterns across galactic distances. There's intelligence directing their approach, something that understands our likely responses. The Guardian's presence pressed closer to Marcus's consciousness. In my previous encounters with them, they operated more like animals, driven by hunger rather than strategy. This suggests they have evolved, or something else is controlling them, Marcus finished. Through the ship's long-range sensors, he could perceive the space behind a Void Spawn fleet. What he found there defied easy description. There's something following them, he reported, his voice carrying new undertones of concern. It's not entering our reality directly, but it's influencing events from somewhere else. Parallel dimension, maybe, or a layer of space-time we don't normally interact with. Veiltar accessed her own command interfaces, her four hands dancing across holographic controls with practiced efficiency. The ancient texts speak of the architects of silence, beings from the spaces between realities. They were supposedly the original creators of the Void Spawn. Not creators, the Guardian corrected, his ancient memories providing context. Shepherds. The Void Spawn are tools, biological weapons designed to prepare galaxies for something else entirely. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his transformed physiology. Through his expanded senses, he could perceive the true scope of the cosmic horror approaching their reality. The Void Spawn weren't conquering their galaxy. They were clearing it of life to make room for something that needed empty space to manifest. "We need to warn Earth," Marcus said, surprised by how easily he could now access the ship's communication arrays, and every other inhabited system in the galaxy. "Warnings will not suffice," the Guardian replied. "The forces we face require more than conventional military response. They require transformation on a species-wide level." Marcus understood immediately. The same biomechanical integration that had transformed him could theoretically be applied to others, creating a network of enhanced beings capable of fighting on both physical and metaphysical levels. "You're talking about changing humanity itself," he said. "I'm talking about survival. The entities behind the Void Spawn operate on scales of thought and existence that unenhanced biological consciousness cannot comprehend, let alone combat." Through the ship's sensors, Marcus detected something new. A small fleet of human vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, apparently drawn by the energy signatures from the Temple ship's recent activities. "Marcus!" The voice came through standard communication channels, familiar and concerned. "Marcus, this is Captain Sarah Hendricks of the Earth Defense Cruiser Prometheus. We detected massive energy fluctuations from your position. Please respond." Marcus felt a pang of something that might have been nostalgia. He'd served aboard the Prometheus early in his career, before becoming an independent contractor. Captain Hendricks had been a good friend, one of the few people who'd understood his wanderlust and need to explore the galaxy's darker corners. "Hello, Sarah," he replied, automatically modulating the ship's transmitters to approximate his original voice patterns. "I'm afraid things have gotten complicated." "Marcus, what the hell is that thing you're aboard? Our sensors are showing biomechanical readings unlike anything in our databases. And the energy output, are you in danger?" How could he explain that he'd accidentally awakened a 3,000-year-old alien god weapon? That he was now part of a living ship that existed somewhere between technology and biology? That galactic civilization was about to face an extinction event that made previous wars look like minor territorial disputes? "Sarah, I need you to listen very carefully," Marcus began. Contact Earth Command immediately. Tell them we're facing an incursion of entities from outside normal spacetime. They'll need to begin immediate evacuation procedures for all colonies within 50 light-years of the galactic edge. Marcus, you're scaring me. What kind of entities? Before he could respond, the Guardian's consciousness pressed against his own, sharing a vision that made both of them freeze in horror. Through cosmic senses that spanned multiple dimensions, they could see what was happening in the space beyond the Void Spawn fleet. Reality itself was beginning to fray at the edges. Sarah, Marcus said, his voice now carrying harmonics that suggested vast distances and cosmic forces. Change of plan. I need you to dock with this ship immediately. And contact every military vessel in communication range. We're going to need all the help we can get. Why? Marcus, what aren't you telling me? Marcus shared his consciousness briefly with the ship's external sensors, allowing Captain Hendricks to see what he was seeing. The tactical display on the Prometheus would now be showing the approaching Void Spawn fleet in all its terrible glory. The silence that followed lasted nearly a full minute. Jesus Christ, Hendricks whispered finally. How long do we have? 2 weeks, maybe 3, Marcus replied. But, Sarah, there's something else. Something that might help us fight them. But it's going to require some volunteers to undergo some significant changes. As if summoned by his words, the Guardian's voice echoed across all communication frequencies, addressing the human fleet directly. Greetings, children of Earth. I am King Zarthal, guardian of the Zephyrian people and defender against the darkness between stars. Your species has produced an individual capable of interfacing with technologies beyond your current understanding. With your consent, we may forge an alliance that could preserve not just your civilization, but the fundamental nature of reality itself. Marcus watched through the ship's sensors as the human vessels adjusted their formations, weapons powering up instinctively in response to the alien presence. This is going well, he muttered, then opened a direct channel to Captain Hendricks. Sarah, I know how this looks, but I need you to trust me one more time. The meeting between species took place aboard the Eternal Vigil in a chamber hastily configured to accommodate both human and Zephyrian physiologies. Marcus found himself serving as translator, mediator, and living example of what the proposed alliance could achieve. Captain Hendricks stared at him with a mixture of recognition and disbelief. Marcus, what have they done to you? They've given me the ability to perceive reality on a scale I never imagined possible. Marcus replied, his enhanced senses automatically adjusting the chamber's atmosphere for optimal comfort for all present. But more importantly, they've shown me what's coming for all of us. The tactical briefing that followed challenged every assumption the human delegation held about their place in the universe. Marcus, with the Guardian's ancient knowledge backing his analysis, painted a picture of cosmic predators that had consumed countless galaxies before setting their sights on the Milky Way. These void spawn, Commander Torres from the heavy cruiser Olympus said, studying the holographic displays with professional interest. Their ships don't match any known physics. How do they move through space without apparent propulsion? They don't move through space, the Guardian explained, his presence manifesting as shifting patterns of light in the chamber's biomechanical walls. They move through the spaces between space. What you perceive as ships are actually multidimensional constructs, existing partially in our reality and partially in realms where different physical laws apply. Captain Hendricks leaned forward in her chair. That's why conventional weapons are ineffective against them. Precisely. Standard matter-energy interactions cannot fully affect entities that exist across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. Marcus stepped forward, his transformed appearance now clearly revealing the extent of his integration with the alien technology. But the biomechanical integration changes that. It allows consciousness to operate on multiple levels of reality. We can meet them on their own terms. At what cost? This came from Dr. Elizabeth Reams, the fleet's senior xenobiologist. Marcus, the changes to your physiology are extensive. Are you still human? The question struck deeper than Marcus had expected. He paused, accessing internal diagnostics that told him exactly how much of his original biological structure remained unchanged. The answer was sobering. "I'm something new," he said finally. "Still me, but expanded beyond the limitations of standard human neurology. I can think in ways that used to be impossible, perceive layers of reality that were previously invisible." "But are you still human?" Dr. Reams pressed. Marcus looked at his hands, now covered in the crystalline carapace that interfaced directly with the ship's systems. "I'm what humanity needs to become to survive what's coming." The Guardian's presence intensified, and suddenly, the chamber filled with images drawn from his vast memory banks. Civilizations across the galaxy that had faced the void spawn without the benefit of transcendence. Worlds stripped of all life in mere hours. Star systems left as empty husks, their energy drained to feed entities that existed beyond normal matter. "Your species has a choice," the Guardian said. "Evolution or extinction. There is no middle ground against forces of this magnitude." Commander Torres studied the tactical data with growing alarm. How many volunteers would be needed for this integration process? Initially, a core group of perhaps 50 individuals, Marcus replied, accessing calculations that flowed through his enhanced consciousness. Each integrated human becomes a node in a larger network. As the network grows, its capabilities expand exponentially. "You're talking about creating a hive mind," Captain Hendricks said, her voice carefully neutral. "No, Marcus Corrective. Individual consciousness remains intact. Think of it more like a neural network where each node retains its unique perspective while gaining access to collective processing power and shared sensory data." Veiltar, who had remained silent throughout most of the discussion, finally spoke. "The Guardian has maintained his individual identity throughout 3 millennia of integration. The process enhances rather than subsumes consciousness." Dr. Reams activated her portable scanner, studying the readings she was getting from Marcus's transformed physiology. The biological changes are remarkable. Enhanced neural density, redundant organ systems, direct interface capability with external technology. "But, Marcus, there's no going back from this. The integration is permanent." "There's no going back from extinction either," Marcus replied. The debate continued for hours, with the human delegation asking increasingly detailed questions about the integration process, its risks, and the strategic advantages it might provide. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus monitored the approaching void spawn fleet, watching as they consumed a mining station in the outer system with casual, predatory efficiency. "We're out of time for extended deliberation," he announced finally. "The advanced scouts of the void spawn fleet will reach inhabited systems within days." Captain Hendricks stood, her decision made. "I volunteer for the integration process." "Sara, no, Commander Torres protestive. We don't fully understand the long-term implications." "I understand that Marcus is still Marcus," she replied firmly. "Enhanced, but fundamentally the same person I've known for years. And I understand that without this advantage, humanity faces extinction." Dr. Reams stepped forward as well. "If we're doing this, you'll need someone with biological expertise to monitor the process and help others adapt to the changes." Within hours, a dozen volunteers from the human fleet had agreed to undergo the integration process. Marcus worked with the Guardian and Veiltar to prepare individual integration chambers, each one calibrated for human physiology. The first volunteer was Lieutenant Commander James Park, a tactical officer from the Prometheus known for his ability to process complex battlefield information rapidly. As the crystalline growth began spreading across his body, Marcus maintained a constant mental link, guiding him through the initial disorientation. The flood of information, Park gasped as his consciousness expanded to interface with the ship's sensor networks. "It's like trying to drink from a fire hose." "Focus on one stream at a time," Marcus advised. "Your brain will adapt faster than you think." Within 6 hours, Park had achieved basic integration. His first act was to access the ship's tactical computers and begin developing new strategies for engaging multidimensional enemies. "I can see them," he reported, his voice carrying new harmonic undertones. The void spawn ships. They're not just physical constructs. They're alive, conscious entities that exist partially in hyperspace. Dr. Reams underwent the integration process next, her scientific mind adapting quickly to the expanded perceptual capabilities. The biomechanical components aren't parasitic, she reported. They're symbiotic. They actually enhance biological function while providing technological interfaces. As each human completed the integration, the collective network grew stronger. Marcus found himself serving as the primary node, his earlier transformation making him the natural focal point for the emerging hybrid consciousness. Captain Hendricks was the last to undergo the process, and her integration proved the most dramatic. Her natural leadership abilities, enhanced by the biomechanical augmentations, allowed her to coordinate the thoughts and actions of the entire integrated group with unprecedented efficiency. "We're not just individuals anymore," she observed, testing her new capabilities by simultaneously monitoring 17 different data streams. "We're something larger, something that can think and act on the same scale as our enemies." Through the ship's external sensors, the integrated humans watched as the main body of the Void Spawn fleet entered the outer reaches of the solar system. The entities moved with purpose and intelligence that spoke of eons of experience in cosmic predation. But now, for the first time in their existence, they faced opponents who could match their multidimensional nature. "Guardian," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of the entire hybrid network. "We're ready to take the fight to them." "Then, let us begin," the ancient being replied. The first lesson in fighting entities from beyond reality is understanding that conventional concepts of victory and defeat no longer apply. We are about to engage in a form of warfare that transcends the merely physical. The temple ship began to change, its biomechanical systems reconfiguring for combat. But this would be unlike any battle in recorded history. This would be a war fought across multiple dimensions of existence, with the fundamental nature of reality itself hanging in the balance. The battle began not with weapons fire or tactical maneuvers, but with a clash of consciousnesses across multiple layers of reality. The integrated humans, now functioning as a collective network while retaining their individual perspectives, reached out through dimensions of space that normal matter could barely touch. What they found there defied every assumption about the nature of the universe. "The Void Spawn aren't just alien, Dr. Reams reported, her consciousness stretched across hyperspace as she analyzed the enemy fleet. "They're fundamental forces of entropy given form and purpose. They exist to reduce complex structures to their simplest components." Marcus, serving as the primary interface between the human network and the Guardian's ancient power, could perceive the cosmic scope of what they faced. "They're not invading our galaxy," he realized. "They're preparing it, breaking down the complex interactions between matter and energy to create a substrate for something else." Through their enhanced senses, the integrated team could see the architects of silence moving in the spaces behind reality. Entities so alien that their very existence warped the fundamental constants of physics in their vicinity. "Now I understand," the Guardian said, his 3,000-year-old consciousness finally grasping the true nature of the threat. "The Void Spawn are not the enemy. They are the advanced preparation. The architects require realities stripped of complexity before they can manifest fully." Captain Hendricks, her enhanced tactical awareness coordinating the thoughts of the entire human network, began developing strategies that no single mind could have conceived. If they need simplified reality to exist in our dimension, then we need to increase complexity faster than they can reduce it. The first direct engagement took place in the space between Jupiter and Saturn, where a Void Spawn scout vessel had materialized to begin consuming the gas giant's energy matrix. The temple ship Eternal Vigil, now serving as the mobile base for the Human Zephyrian Guardian Alliance, approached through both normal space and hyperspace simultaneously. Lieutenant Commander Park, his consciousness expanded across multiple dimensional layers, coordinated the attack. Target the resonance points where they anchor to our reality, he directed. If we can destabilize their multidimensional structure, they'll be forced back into their native dimension. The weapons that engaged the Void Spawn vessel were unlike anything in conventional armories. Biomechanical constructs that fired concentrated bursts of organized complexity rather than simple destructive energy. Each shot increased the local entropy gradient, forcing the alien entities to expend energy, maintaining their coherence. "It's working," Dr. Reams reported as the enemy scout began to phase in and out of visible reality. They're losing dimensional cohesion. But the victory was temporary. The moment the scout vessel retreated, larger void spawn constructs began emerging from hyperspace around them. These were not simple ships, but living weapons the size of small moons, their surfaces crawling with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "New contacts," Park announced. "Dozens of them. And they're not just entering our space, they're bringing sections of their native dimension with them." The space around the temple ship began to change. Stars flickered and warped as different physical laws imposed themselves on local reality. Gravity became inconsistent, light bent in impossible directions, and time itself seemed to flow at variable rates. Marcus felt the strain as his enhanced consciousness struggled to maintain coherence across increasingly unstable dimensional boundaries. "Guardian, we need more processing power. The human network can't handle this level of multidimensional warfare alone." "Then we expand the network," the ancient being replied. "Captain Veiltar, signal the Zephyrian fleet. It is time for your people to undergo the same transformation that has enhanced the humans." Across the galaxy, Zephyrian vessels received the unprecedented command. For 3,000 years, their people had reverently maintained the Guardian's sleep, but few had ever considered joining him in his transcendent state. Now, faced with extinction, hundreds of Zephyrian warriors volunteered for immediate integration. The process that had taken hours for the humans proceeded much faster with Zephyrian physiology. Their natural biomechanical affinity allowed for near-instantaneous adaptation to the enhancement systems. Within minutes, the network had expanded to include nearly 1,000 enhanced consciousnesses. The effect was dramatic. What had been a desperate defensive action suddenly became a coordinated assault across multiple fronts of reality. Zephyrian integration specialists merged their consciousness with human tactical thinking and the Guardian's ancient power, creating combination attacks that struck at the very foundations of void spawn existence. "They're retreating," Captain Hendricks announced as several of the massive enemy constructs began phasing back toward hyperspace. But Marcus could sense something troubling through his expanded awareness. No, they're not retreating. They're repositioning. And they're calling for reinforcements from the architects themselves. The space behind the void spawn fleet began to tear open like a wound in reality. Through the gaps, the integrated alliance could perceive entities of such alien nature that looking at them directly threatened to dissolve the boundaries of individual consciousness. "The architects of silence," the Guardian said, his voice carrying undertones of cosmic dread. "They come." What emerged from the tiers in space defied description. Beings that existed as living mathematics, geometric impossibilities that rewrote the laws of physics simply by being present. Their influence spread like a virus through local space-time, turning ordered systems into chaos and reducing complex matter to constituent quantum foam. "We can't fight them directly," Dr. Reams reported, her enhanced perception analyzing the architect's effect on nearby space. "They operate on a level of reality that our consciousness can't fully interface with." Marcus felt an idea forming, one that drew on both human innovation and the Guardian's ancient wisdom. "We don't fight them directly. We fight their influence. We become agents of increasing complexity, seeding reality with patterns so intricate that they can't simplify them fast enough." "Explain," Captain Hendricks demanded, her tactical mind already working through the implications. "Look at what we've become," Marcus said, gesturing to encompass the entire integrated network. were proof that consciousness and technology can merge to create something greater than the sum of its parts. If we can spread this integration across entire populations, we create a cascade of complexity that outpaces anything the architects can reduce. The Guardians' consciousness pressed against the human network, sharing visions of what such a transformation might look like. Entire worlds where the boundaries between biological and technological systems had dissolved, creating hybrid civilizations that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions of reality. You're talking about transforming galactic civilization itself, Lieutenant Commander Park said. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Marcus replied. Evolution on a species-wide scale. Not just humans and Zephyrians, but every intelligent species willing to undergo the change. Through the ship's communication systems, they began broadcasting the integration protocols to every inhabited system in the galaxy. The message was simple: evolve or face extinction. Become something new, or watch reality itself be stripped away by forces that viewed complex existence as an aberration to be corrected. The response was overwhelming. Species that had never communicated with each other suddenly found themselves linked through the expanding consciousness network. Ancient rivalries dissolved as different forms of intelligence merged their unique perspectives into a collective understanding that transcended individual species limitations. As the network grew, its power increased exponentially. What had begun as a desperate alliance between humans and Zephyrians became a galactic transformation event. Billions of consciousnesses, each retaining their individual identity while gaining access to collective capabilities that approached the cosmic scale. The architects of silence, accustomed to reducing ordered systems to chaos, found themselves facing something unprecedented, a galaxy actively increasing its own complexity faster than entropy could break it down. They're pulling back, Dr. Reams announced as the tiers in space-time began to close. The architects are returning to their native dimension. Not retreating, the Guardian corrected. Reassessing. We have presented them with a problem they have never encountered before. They will return with new strategies. Marcus nodded, his consciousness now spanning star systems as the integration network continued to expand. Then, we'll be ready for them. All of us, together. Through the vast network of enhanced consciousness, he could feel the pulse of an entire galaxy transforming itself. Humans learning to think in mathematical dimensions previously incomprehensible to biological minds. Zephyrians sharing their biomechanical mastery with species who had never dreamed such integration was possible. Ancient civilizations that had hidden in dark corners of space emerging to add their knowledge to the collective understanding. The war was far from over. The architects would return, possibly with allies from dimensions even more alien than their own. But for the first time since the crisis began, Marcus felt genuine hope. Humanity had not just survived its encounter with cosmic horror. It had evolved, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy a path to transcendence that no single species could have achieved alone. In the depths of space, the Void-Spawn fleet regrouped around their wounded leaders. They would be back, but they would find a very different galaxy waiting for them. One where the boundaries between flesh and machine, between individual and collective consciousness, had blurred beyond recognition. The mechanic who had simply wanted to repair a broken system had accidentally triggered the next phase of galactic evolution. And in the vast network of enhanced minds that now span the galaxy, Marcus Chun continued to do what he had always done best: fix things that were broken and make them better than they had ever been before.